sign and stuff. So it was actually, the book was passed over to a different team,
Who's how old around?
which intended to stick, even though it was an updated edition with a lot of new material, they were going to stick with the forward by Sly and the only authorized blah blah. And they were approached by lawyers from Questlove's Empire, who said, we don't want you to do that. And if you do, we're going to figure out a way to bring a legal action.
Is she near Austin or is it?
Not to my book, no.
Why would they have any?
Yeah, the blue spot.
Because
What are the
they're
blue
big
spots?
and expensive, and they got my publisher worried. So my publisher talked to me about that.
Have you
And
ever
I said,
explored
I
the
don't
state? Is it
care
a pretty
whether you
beautiful state? I mean,
want, if you don't want to call what Sly said,
it's only in the northern, you know, the horrible,
I'll find another place to put it in the book.
flat,
And I'll get a new
panhandle
forward by
kind of
somebody
area
else.
up at the top.
And if you don't want to call it the only authorized biography, I don't care, because everybody already knows.
No,
it.
no, it was a long time
So
ago.
I allowed
Yeah, but,
a compromise, a Ukrainian
it was, you know,
arrangement to
not
take place
pretty
in
part
the
of
name of
Texas.
peace.
so, but,
No, I mean, the closest I got was having worked for a
I
magazine and
I didn't want, even though I've got a beautiful lawyer for a daughter, I just didn't want to get embroiled in any of
farther
that.
south in Texas.
So they made an empty threat out of your publisher.
They decided to bow, and I didn't want them.
Firsthand, I don't know.
yeah, so huge.
I know.
Convoluted and never.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Everything's so
indicative
big.
of Questlove's approach
All right.
to what he does. He's an empire builder.
How much time would boot off the sound?
I don't know, they say 5, but it's kind
Oh,
of,
5 minutes is tight. Okay.
it's
All right.
somewhat flexible.
Lights are dimming.
Yes, indeed.
Not showing up.
Yeah, maybe that's. Kristen, you can, yeah. So a couple minutes of
Sure.
pregnant silence.
I'm
As long
remind.
as there are no abortions.
Yeah, well, that's what, you're the first reader, so we're a little worried about you.
Thanks, Michael.
Yeah. But, yeah, this literally wait 2 minutes. You know?
Start the clock.
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
I'm reminded of the poet Basil Bunting, and he said that he wanted on his gravestone it to say, minor poet, not obviously dishonest.
Yes. No, he never would have made it in this political climate.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
It's oxymoronic.
Don't you have a phone number for Jerry?
That will help us. I think Eric stepped out for a moment. Did he?
Is Eric going to start?
Scooter, is that you?
Yeah, how you doing?
Yeah, how you doing? Good.
Saxophone. Howard Weiler. The guy is so music the way I would sometimes like to do poetry. He plays tenor, but he really explores the upper and lower range. He gets a lot out of that instrument.
Just stand beside you for a moment.
Certainly. Maybe you could hold up this book.
Oh, yeah.
Tell people it's a.
So it gives us great pleasure to host Beau Beausoleil tonight, reading from his most recent collection of poetry called War News 2, 12/9/23 to 6/3/24. And of course, the amount of war news encapsulated in that little historical thing is quite extraordinary on every level. And of course, and it continues as we speak. I've known Beau, I got here in 1972, I think. Beau, around that time is when you came to?
I came in 69.
69, okay, yeah. A little bit ahead of me. And, you know, he's always been somebody I've especially admired for his eloquence on many levels, and his subtlety, but especially his moral eloquence, that he's never shied away from looking face on to, you know, some of the most vexing and heartbreaking situations that we encounter as a community and as individuals. So again, I'm delighted. We'd had some other people were scheduled originally for this month, and Beau very gallantly stepped in when emergency happened with those guys. So I'm thrilled that we can get the evening off to a notable start and to hear Beau reading from his latest collection.
Thank you. So War News is a very affordable price. It's only $10 and available at the front counter. This is the preface in the book. The book was published by a local publisher, FMSBW. It's Matt Gonzalez and Tamsin Smith. They concentrate on publishing poets from Northern California. So this is the preface. I began writing these war news poems on October 8th, 2023. I wrote a poem each day in reaction to the ongoing genocidal war on civilians in Gaza. The poems are both a way to register my solidarity with the Palestinian people, as well as a way to measure the temperature and debris of this war in my own daily life. These poems are a visceral and personal reaction to what I was reading and seeing in the media each day. All the poems carry the same title, War News. And the first 100 poems, covering the first 3 months of the killing, were published by Agitate Journal in December 2023 as a free online ebook. This chapbook holds the poems written between December 9th, 2023 and June 3rd, 2024. After June 3rd, I could no longer sustain the intensity of writing a poem each day about the continuing genocide in Gaza. I continued to write about Gaza, but those poems are not part of this series. About these poems, I feel they are at times both useless and necessary. So I'm just going to, instead of the title, I'm just going to read the date that I wrote the poem. December 10th, 2023. I sit in our kitchen in the morning, waiting for the early light to find me. And I think of you, and how the first morning light in Gaza must be so raw with pain that you fear to touch it. Thank you. December 17th. She wrote the word freedom and put it in her poem. She wanted her children to see it, to feel its texture, to breathe it in before they died on any other day. So 48,000 Palestinian civilians have died, 13,000 children. 13,000 children. And children appear a lot in the poems in this book, Warner's. That figure is just so staggering. December 18th. Each day comes at you like a fist, I wrote to her. Still, the moon rises and falls at the edge of your left eye, I typed. This is not poetry, she wrote. This is not dying under the collapse of some words and then walking out into a shaded garden. Part of these poems is the realization that it's impossible to write about this. But I tried to bring everything I could each day to trying exactly that. But many of the poems talk about the absolute failure. And like I say in the preface, that they are both useless and necessary. I think it's necessary for us all to lean our voices into this as poets. I think it's really important. December 25th. The sky above the killing never acknowledges the suffering and death below it. Warm days pass into fall and then winter. A blue sky can hover above the worst personal carnage. With my words, I try and fail to impart sorrow to a winter rain as it sweeps across this city so far from you. January 1st, 2024. Like the moon, you hide one face from those who come only to observe your grief. My poems belong to the distance between us. I write them as a gesture of witness from the other side of this companion moon. January 5th. Is it possible to understand the enormity of the killing in Gaza that faces us on each anonymous day that I mark with only words? I deliberately look towards the slow rising sunlight in our garden, and while the radio voice isolates the death of another sleeping family. Later, in front of the cafe, I stand still in the blur of the sidewalk and look around for someone I once lost. January 9th. I heard the child answer the reporter's question of what she hoped for in the new year. She answered through the interpreter that she hoped she would not die. I cannot tie the blood knot of words in this war any tighter than that. January 20th. We walk past the highway exit ramp, which has a sign facing any oncoming traffic. Go back, you are going the wrong way. And I think of the war. January 28th. I've seen countless photographs of wounded children in Gaza whose faces and clothes were covered in the ashen concrete dust of the bombings that they had barely survived. Their expressions range from a lasting terror to a stunned bewilderment, burned in a blank stare. But if there are 2 or more children sitting on a gurney or on the floor in an aid station or standing together, their absent lives tied tight to them like a bloody bandage, they hold onto the small sibling or stranger next to them. They sit or stand as close as possible so they will not sink out of sight and be pulled alone into another oblivion. February 3rd. I'm trying to get at something that will not emerge unless I scrape the primal black words from this page and step back to see the killing in Gaza as it disturbs the supply chain and raises the price of our lattes. We need to put out the fires in the trees of our birth and mix their ashes with that part of us that does not understand the multiple histories of children being killed or why our mother did not want to come back to sing at our wedding. February 10th. In order to order over 1 million people to move out of the way, to replace all thought with fear, to consider all the Palestinians as already fallen leaves that must be swept to one side of this blood-soaked path, as you deny any suffering but your own. February 11th. There are knots of sorrow that cannot be untied, or the pull of the moon would increase over our body, and the unbelievable weight of our waking tears would bring us to our knees before we could escape our next breath. April 9th. I was thinking about my fellow poets, all of you here probably. I mistrust the clouds in their graveyard of blue sky. I mistrust the documents that allow the stars to be seen by liars. I trust only poets who sleep like children, and I admire those who rescue innocent words from the mouths of fascists. I end this last page of my confession with the hope that this genocidal war will kill itself in a moment of sanity. April 11th. There is a way to not die every other minute, but no one knows how to do that anymore. There is a way to pass a child on the sidewalk and not think of the children in Gaza, but I don't know how to do that anymore. We link arms on the page as an act of witness. We link arms in the street to remember that we are not alone. April 13th. I am here most days with a pen and pencil, holding some pages of lined school notebook paper. Some consider those as tools of my trade, while others see them as weapons adjacent to war. As for my words, they see themselves as no more than blades of dry grass that sometimes are woven tight enough to hold the water of truth. April 17th. It is the structure of killing that most frightens me, as it remains in place, waiting to matter the complete destruction around it. April 23rd. Words so often betray me that I am wary of even writing the word peace. Instead, I stand in our garden and think of Gaza in its darkness. And once again, I steady myself on the trunk of the rust-green maple tree, which is firm in its roots, in its desire to find the morning light. May 12th. She is out on the language, talking to the birds that don't want to fly over Gaza anymore. Oh, be my friend in your sorrow, she writes on the crossed out paper sidewalk. I will teach you how to fall out of a poem and sing yourself to sleep without dying. May 14th. A car with an entire country tied to its top drives by. I wave to the child who sits alone by the rolled down window, and she waves back many years later. May 1st. End every sentence with the word love. End every hour with the word peace. End every journey with the word farewell. And think of Gaza. Thank you. Can I give you that, Andrea?
Beau Beausoleil.
Thank you very much.
We're so appreciative for your words and efforts. And again, each poem is a moral vignette. It's so moving, and again, you know, it stands. Each of them to me stands on its own as something to savor and meditate on and absorb. So it's you know, it's a rare gift, a rare gift indeed. So,
Thank you.
deeply appreciated. So I guess we're going to take probably a 10-minute break, and then if you want to read in the open session and haven't signed up yet, you can sign up with Jerry. There's still plenty of spaces for those who would like to read, and then we'll so a month from the first Thursday of April, we'll have the duo who was originally scheduled for tonight. That's Francisco Orrego, who's quite a personality, also a gifted visual artist, and Maria Medina, who always does some musical flavors to her thing, a little singing probably, and a little percussion and what have you. And then I'm going to join them at the end of their thing. I have a new chapbook out, and just to have a little focus on that, to read some of those poems, and
Nice.
maybe we'll have a little bread and cheese and wine or whatever. So that's in another month. So all right, in 10 minutes we'll get started again.
Great. Thanks.
I kept thinking every time I would write one of that, there wouldn't be any need to write one the next day. So I ended up writing more than 400. So sad.
What else have you been up to?
Well, it doesn't matter that anybody can see it. Intrusive, intensely.
Yeah.
Are we that known?
can't do much.
So he finally did come through last night.
The day it closed. Yeah, that's right. Nice. I mean, you know, a lot of bookstores won't even carry this.
But I'm not saying I'm happy about it.
It's too like.
So,
Is he working?
resigning himself full time. And he's going to school twice a week.
Volunteering to be oppressed.
Volunteering to be.
Last year, he made a big
This year part of it's online.
Well,
yeah.
There's a son and there's a family.
Back on the positive side of leisure, you're going to have to spend part of spring break.
Why aren't you afraid to carry it? You just do it without thinking about it. Yeah, how could you not?
I can't imagine.
And he said, okay. He said, okay. So we'll see.
Have the window smash or whatever.
So that means I'm not going to. Which one's the original? Which one? I remember that. But I might take him out on beer. This summer.
You know, it's like,
So that'll be my place.
I'm gonna go at the end of this month to
I haven't been up.
Associated Writing Program in LA. And I'm part of a panel on
there is a
resistance
devotion in that.
Ukrainian
Doesn't do
American
much
poet.
creative energy.
Which you are
Should be
correct.
interesting.
Yeah, I am. But I feel I can't force
Just
myself
talking
to
about
do it.
No,
Ukraine and Gaza,
that would be artificial.
what it's like to try and write about that from this distance.
I mean, I should. I should have a habit of trying to do something every day in the direction I should.
You have to plan what works for you, whether it's
through the years,
time of day, whether it's number of lines, or number of pages, whatever, but you've got to find
Yeah, they just
something
had
that Troy
it was a reading
would
for
Troy
Almaty Street in
to make Troy satisfied.
Vicenza, Italy.
To figure out how
One,
to
I
make
just got to go
make
today.
love to your muse.
One
and
that's
have
up
that
every
be
year
satisfied.
I think I just don't want
Shabander Cafe in Baghdad.
to actually physically.
There's one tonight.
Because I work so much of that work. You know?
That's one 2
Take
days ago.
No cooking, take a walk. For
Yeah.
Christ's sake. You know, get the little ring thing you
Still
can
happens.
yeah,
jot down notes in. I know, it'd be like Thoreau or something. Get out there, right? That might work.
That might work. Especially now
For
that
me,
yeah, because
Natalie was getting, because she uses our dining room table basically
I
as
think
hard
it
as
is.
on many days, but she was getting
Exactly.
antsy, and so she and I
I think
both
we
went
opened
down
ground
to
for
Java in Ocean,
Yeah.
the coffee
that's
house,
a nice place.
and I went down
Musicians.
there with her, and she
Yeah.
was doing her lawyer work,
You know,
and I
every
just tried
musician,
to recall.
when they play, shows the possibility of
That
what
worked out.
someone else can do.
I like John Lodge.
yeah, that's
Yeah, it's friendly, it's good, the big windows, you know, even on a cold day, if there's some sun, you know, things get warm, and they still, there's no extra words, there's house music as well, and their music is usually rural music, I kind of like that stuff.
Yeah. Keisha's a bad
Houston's not bad, just the owner is quite
less
funny,
hours
you
to
get to know him.
He's a funny guy.
more or less.
I wish I had more news. You know.
The musicians community.
Well,
I just need people
I'm
to
not
come in
rating
and
you
be
on
happy to
that.
see
Well,
you know, and I get that.
And that's wonderful.
You get high marks for that.
really makes a difference.
Yeah, well, it's hard to hope for anything more, you know, it's hard to hope.
So I have one more year to go.
A future without
I know. What do you think of those twins?
Because I thought,
Flavors.
you know,
Well, Hobby was born during the rain, the first rain hour. Now he has to have a filter for 4 more years.
yeah, but I found out that's not true.
Yeah, well, not every time.
Not true. Once, after December, my pension will be locked in at whatever rate I pay.
Uh-huh.
So, that's
Hey,
Hey, Mo.
because if, if I work part-time
Nice
now,
friends by the picture.
Oh, yeah.
that's not the basis for my pension. My last job.
Well, cemeteries.
So I have to retire.
So what will you do in the morning?
Yeah.
right.
Well,
I just had, just had some homes accepted for what, the first anti-Trump apology.
That's the first one.
First one, I guess he's trying to get it out as soon as possible.
The place is to do it more and more.
It's a press in Indiana
I'm,
called something like
I got a friend who's gonna take us to
Morada
the
Press,
spring break.
and just does political things. I'm sure he's going broke by every day.
Oh,
Feels that same
Yeah,
compulsion that I do.
Oh,
He's
that
gathered
one,
some
yeah.
really good poets.
yeah, I know,
Sent me the
one
PDF
of my
the other day.
favorites, Bob Rubin, is gonna be there in April.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, who are some of the poets that come to you
Because
now?
he is
You work
mind bending.
alongside.
Well,
I've heard that name.
He was the very first person.
I know, I keep
wrote
finding
about.
them. People are springing up, like the
Very
names
first
in that
article I did was
anthologies. I didn't recognize any of the names, but I love many of the poems.
many decades, well, not many decades, but many.
There's an online journal that I like a lot that's called Word Peace. One word Peace. That has a lot of really interesting people. But I'd love to see,
There it is.
like a national figure of a poet emerge.
Whoops, April.
Not yet.
On a Wednesday.
Probably out there. But I don't know. Everything is so
He's a favorite of yours.
Oh, yeah.
tenuous if you write anything,
Wacky as hell.
about Palestinians. We're lucky we're in California in that sense.
No, he's
I
on the
mean,
East Coast.
this camera, you don't need a phone.
No, that
He teaches at
the people that would like to see this continue are laying for anybody that they can slap. It's like the Trump administration. Anyone they can attack for anything.
He was talking about being on acid.
Progressive thought, human thought.
I wrote this really short poem called Election News. It goes, knives and the sharpening stones laid out in plain sight. Waiting. And that one came true faster than I imagined.
Yeah, it's breathtaking. It's,
Thanks for recording that.
yeah.
I appreciate it. And that'll spread them a little further.
Lots of water.
Nice friend.
No, I'm good.
I was just telling someone about Panjandrum Press.
Really?
Yeah, that's it, huh?
Yeah, Korea.
We had that thing play, what was it, on Noe Street? I think so.
Sanchez, 99 Sanchez. I know with a giant linotype machine in
He
front.
was really good at riffing.
You could walk in, that would, when he operated, it would shake the floor.
It's very helium-like. All right, Bob. Hang it up,
Okay, here we go.
Bob Rubin.
Well, Jerry, I guess I'll introduce myself, read a couple of things, and then
Okie doke.
turn over the extravaganza to you.
Okie doke.
Yes. Molto bene.
Jerry, is that a Ranger's hat?
So why don't we, once you're done, why don't we put that up a little
little
stand,
bit.
it'll probably be easier than.
Oh, standing probably.
I think,
Yeah,
you know,
that might be.
closer to just getting up here for a
That's
couple
true.
minutes at a
That's-
time. If you want to sit, you can.
No, no, I'm whatever. I don't know. So. Yeah, so the evening's off to an extraordinary start. Again, it's very humbling. Again, speaking to Andrea about the project and how the momentum that it sets up, and I realize the artist at the highest level is someone who brings something back to the tribe that the individuals daren't do on their own. It's like going out in the wilderness and confronting the mythical beast or proverbial enemy or whatever in a way that everybody can't do, and you become the sacrificial lamb to go out in the field. You're crossing a narrow bridge across the abyss with the winds howling, and you're the representative of your whole community and your whole culture. And this is, yeah. So I think we should leave well enough alone and go home. Well, fools rush in, so I'm going to begin before Jerry takes over. I'm just going to read a couple of things or whatever, but just. So yeah, that's a couple. So a couple of whole thing. This is entitled "At the Final Frontier." Flushed with sun and hashish, I stroll the parapet, arm in arm with loneliness. I stare out toward enemies, but where are they? Only my hungers consuming me, like the chimes of Calypso's song. I should be silent, listen and look, but I'm a chattering magpie. What is an opal to the blind, or starlight to a fish? What silent beast is stalking me? The moon is rising, my fears are dying. No one can steal this emptiness inside me. Yeah, and I'll finish with one other. This is, I know certainly Jerry knew Gary Johnston, Clyde Gary Johnston. Probably few other people here did, but for Clyde Gary Johnston, 1934 to 1980. And he was one of the early poets I met when I came in the early 70s to San Francisco, and he was quite the character, a tortured soul in many fascinating ways. For Clyde Gary Johnston, 1934 to 1980. My friend died in a trough of birds in the ghetto of Dizzy's Hat. Deep in the platonic grotto where the day blindness of an owl is a black dog, his bones were gnawed for meat. My friend called out to the Virgin from a cold floor, his whisper strangled in the folds of her silks, in the litanies of worms, in the coitus of springtimes. My friend died on March 17th on an emerald carpet in a chalice of insomnia at 16th and Mission, a half block from the Roxy. His blood, as it burned, was the sun visor of a fast limousine. Thank you. Jerry Faraz.
Whatever happened to Jerry Perez? Good God. So I'm just going to read a poem and sing a song. I wrote a book of bird poems that's being published. This is one of them. It's called A Band-Tailed Pigeon. Do I need glasses? Once in such numbers, they darken the sky. There's a bird rarely shows itself now around these parts. The so-called band-tailed pigeon. Only seen one once myself at the bird feeder. According to my book of birds, a young one, light gray with a white ring for a collar. Don't know if it were just passing through or native to the area, but just very discreet in its habits. More graceful than the feral pigeons from the city, I was struck by its quiet, solitary nature, vigilant and pure, affording me a moment of peace and reassurance, a glimpse into my own original nature, far from the travesty of so-called civilization. What a pity we're no longer as free, just to feed forever on wisdom and beauty in this vale of wonder. A famous poet once told me, we have to sing even when we're not singing. Like the bandtail at the bird feeder of my heart, all find what they need without having to understand or even to see where it all comes from, like poetry, words like birds that fly away forever, like a letter from a lost lover, never to return. Oh, don't ask why. Yeah, I gave my old one away.
There have been other old ones.
Yeah, I always give my old guitars away. I think I'm gonna have to sit down. What the hell's this? This is the oldest American song. Well, the cuckoo, she's a pretty bird. She warbles as she flies, but she never hollers cuckoo till the 4th day of July. Yes, the cuckoo, she's a pretty bird, and I wish she was mine. She don't never drink water, she only drinks wine. gonna build me a cabin on the mountain so high, so then I can spy the cuckoo as she warbles on by. Yes, the cuckoo, she's a pretty bird, and she warbles as she flies, but she never hollers cuckoo till the 4th day of July. Okay, so we got seven poets. So, my rule is that come to read what you came to read. And if you go on too long, have we forgotten the ancient hook? Remember that? Right? It's like, is that a vaudeville thing? Yeah. Okay, so Jeff Kalis.
Eric, does anything have to happen to this mic to make it good for standing up reading?
We'll find a place for it.
Thank you. Let's have a hand for Eric.
All right.
And Michael and Jerry and Beau. I so much admire your courage for getting out to the world and embracing dealing with something that you were a little trepidatious about, and I think it was wonderful and good for all of us. You're a hard act to follow, but I'll try. I also gave it a try. Very different. It doesn't compare to yours, but hopefully it'll be maybe somewhat entertaining. So shamed you had to hear foul words breathed out and amplified on Tuesday night in the chamber, in the House. Our legislators seated in their rows, hearing putrescent hate and denigration from a president malignant in my present. Here are some words breathed windward by this world, time sharing with me on Wednesday afternoon, and after and now shared with you, dear ones. Sail with me, windborne now, to where and when I came from, to that seaside state up on the shoulder of what seemed a worthy union then, beckoning an elementary student towards a sunny citizenship. In that past, the president seemed still to wear the hero's ribbons from the war my father served in. Seated in his White House, he had gray blue eyes just like my mom, and sandy gray hair, and his nickname rhymed with like. And I liked Ike, and liked the starred and striped flag which waited on the wall above Miss Bennet's desk, ready every morning by the dawn's early light, ready for our ritual rising from our desks, for our placing of our tender hands upon our tender hearts, to play out our allegiance to something so much bigger, so much older, something we'd grow into, wanting to be able to believe in a land of the free and a home of the brave. And another anthem, what we shared beyond our island and what we cross on into, those amber waves of grain and purple mountains' majesty across the fruited plain. How big our hopes were then. I still have that heart. I still want that hope. I just hope you'll help me try to stretch that small town aspiration over all the best of my America, girding it in goodness and in love. Thank you. And I very much love places like this, and I love music. Here's a poem, a tribute to where I'm going to be off to in just a few minutes, which is the Royal Cuckoo Organ Lounge, not too far from here. From an atmospheric river just a few weeks back, I swerved off on a stream of consciousness on into the Royal Cuckoo Organ Lounge, where I drank a scotch and soda while the old record player swayed. Moon River, wider than a mile. And just then a pretty naiad, sheltered from the storm, murmured in the lamplit fluids of my brain. It's going to be good, boy, she promised. Aren't you a good boy? Then she leashed me and led me. Yes, I let myself let her lure me through the cocktail chatter of cicadas, where I could get right down, walk right in. Baby, let that mind roll on. Right on down to the river to pray, to study about that good old way. And who shall wear the starry crown? Good naiad, show me the way. She urged me on. Into that river I divested of external purpose, winking at the glimmering gladness, my hazel eyes smiling, listening, feeling the current's flow, serpentine parallels in plangent harmonies. Fresh scented, the naiad held my hand, held my hope, so I myself, I could not, should not, would not hold the river. No, 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 and the naiad knew the river would not hold me. So, and knew that the river, nymph, and man need not hold time. No, we three would flow in tune with time, in time with all. I asked her then if in my telling of it to you all, it might seem just a moment. Can we call it that, my dear diva of delight, while we sing in it, dance in it, rhythm like the beating of a heart? Oh, yes, yes, she chuckled, and a graceful melody rippled all around us, while the rooted trees watched, laughing from the shore. Thank you all for listening.
What is that? A naiad? It's like an Indian thing?
It's a water nymph.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Bring us strange things.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Jerry.
Amen.
Thank you all.
And we have, I'm not sure if I, is it Ricardo? It is Ricardo. Okay, Ricardo Elizalde?
Yes.
All right. first time here to read?
No,
No?
no, it's like the third.
Oh my God.
No, it's okay. This is a beautiful song you sung. Thank you, poets, tonight. I guess what can tie us all together is that these are poems about my America. I'm Ricardo Elizalde. Dr. Rodriguez spoke about giving her stories space in her books, or rather how she hadn't. And I understood. As academics, we forget what we voraciously hungered for. Ethnic studies. In her case, Philippine studies. In mine, La Raza studies. Hungered for our stories. These are the seeds that deserve planting, watering, deserve more thought than the time that I am putting into them. When folks ask to read my dissertation, I point them to page 70. Seeds from my stories appear there. A page of seeds sprinkled on one page of a 130-page document. I am the youngest of 6. I see my siblings in my students. Evidence of what I long to share. People say, I want to read more of that. And I, Dr. E, still want to tell you more. So here's me telling you a little bit more of that. We hear a lot about undocumented peoples. This poem is a response to an author called Carla Cornejo Villavicencio, who writes about undocumented people in the way I understand them, in that they are three-dimensional people that are a fabric of this country. The author in the ornate school district auditorium, sleeveless, white dress, white stockings, and tattoos, kind of looks like my cousin, said the undocumented are often depicted as scared children behind a chain-link fence, a face to feel sorry for. But what if that fearful stare is not that, but a stare of determination? Take me from your fields, from your construction sites, from your restaurants, from delivering your food. Rip me from your homes as I care for your children and your elderly. Stop me from helping to clean the wreckage of 9/11, of Katrina, of Hurricane Francine, of the LA fires. Still we smile and dance to merengues and cumbias, bachatas, valses, sones, vallenatas, norteños, and reggaeton. The guaguanco will still hit with the clave, helping to keep time. Dum, 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 dum. Dum, 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 dum. Their poison is not potent. It hasn't yet taken the smile from my face, hasn't stopped the joy of kicking the round ball or of us gathering this weekend for arepas, conversations, and connections. Didn't stop Carlitos from telling me to use my 2 tongues to forge a decent future, not one where you go home every night with swollen, throbbing hands and aching knees. It won't stop the unceasing ocean. We, and yes, you, are still just a grain of sand. Your potent power will wilt. And if you proceed with the plans of kicking my brothers and sisters out, be ready. I'm that boy sitting in the back of the classroom, or that teacher in the front of the classroom, watching, waiting, staring back at you with resolve. We have known this fight exists, and we're still here. This is a work in progress, this last one. But it's one that I'm supposed to read tonight. All right. Pops got fired because he got into a fight from his flooring company. Refused to carry the man's tools. I imagine the scene. Cold, foggy, late afternoon. Go grab my tools, boy. Pops, no one's boy, refused. They fought. He got fired but was given a parting gift. Ever seen a kicker? A strange-looking tool, knob on top, retractable teeth to make sure it grips the rug. No job, 6 children at home, and a wife that didn't work, and neither one had the language to defend themselves in this country. With that kicker, my father worked for himself, and to hear my mother tell it, he dragged along his sons. Come here to this country so you could work on your knees, she said. Though the work called us to be on our knees. How could you install a 4 without being on your knees? There on the corner of Church and Day with a forest of carpet for a 5-year-old, we planted our seed and stood. Right here in a blue-collar SF in 2 tongues on the edge of the Mission District, mother is secretary, brothers as laborers, Señor Ecuador, one of the guys called him. How do you open a business not having the language and only one specialized tool? And it still reverberates in my soul 50 years later. Thank you, everybody.
Hey everyone, how we doing? Good. Okay. Star Touch. Star Touch comes from the cosmos. It comes down into our bones and livens us once again from stories of old, the ones worth telling, not of sin and fables, but of humanity and where we come from, one link. Star Touch is the energy that goes down to your bones and moves you forward. It gives you passion and life once again when you realize that we aren't black, we aren't white, we aren't male, we aren't female, we aren't Russian, we aren't United States or American. We're just human. Before the labels came, before the war came, before the division came, before people looked at others as others, the Star Touch is the reminder that love is the only way forward. Else we sit in the cycles of war where one person says, I don't know you, and therefore you are my enemy. But thus has it not always been that it returns in cycles of blood. Once and again and a more. We cannot escape it, and yet somehow we must. Observing and the observer. To see beyond the limited scope of beliefs, ideologies, and dogmas, where thought is not forced or controlled, when the quiet allows for infinity to emerge as a sunrise ascends over the mountain crest. Thou art one and the same, experience and the experiencer together. Our vast mind is consciousness in action. No separation. The trash in my neighborhood or down the street is the world I live in, actively and with distinct purpose and prospects. Nature as I, and I thus as nature. For the habit is changed by this being, the eternity of now, not by divisive thought or internal struggle, but by the trust for intuition and self. Dost thou trust the self as the flowers trust the sun? More words cannot set the entity free, as more thought means more tension, more doubt and fear of the unknown. Let us love beyond the conceptual mind. Breathe the body back to calm. Find serene paths with focused precision. You are only beginning to understand yourself in the purest perspective. Past the past, halting the future, thou exists now in the measure of the mental construction of time. Do not seek, be the energy you need. Immense power waits for your approval to unleash all your stored up potential. Thank you very much.
Okay, Brett. And Troy Cantrell.
So I have something old and something new. Okay. This is for a funeral that I could not attend, so this is in honor of that. Instead of a funeral, I decided to write my friend a letter. Dear Robert, I remember when I first met you, or better to say, you met me. I had just gone from being a day-to-day sub to taking over a high school drama class for the semester, replacing a teacher who'd been caught drinking on the job one too many times. Suddenly, I'd become the teacher of record, finding myself with a class of teenagers who told me it was refreshing to have someone with enthusiasm for theater, their old boozy teacher having burnt out before their eyes. But there was another teacher on the staff, a full generation older than me, who was also a theater nerd. And thus, you ingratiated yourself to me, going out of your way to find me in the main office first thing in the morning as I signed in, before I even knew your name. And so it went for the next 21 years. You ingratiated yourself to me, time and again, insisting on being my friend, and yourself more deserving of that place than just about anyone I've ever known. Even to this day, I'm hard-pressed to name any other individual in my life who is as consistently reliable, as unquestionably supportive, both practically, on the spot, and emotionally from the heart. And especially anyone to a fault as generous, perhaps the singular most quality that defines you. Everyone who knows you, from passing acquaintances to former students to longtime friends and lifetime family members, realized your second-nature generosity almost from first sight. Some examples. I am due to go on a hot first date, but my paycheck is late, leaving me with no immediate cash to spend. You slipped me an extra $50, even though I did not ask, heroically saving the day. I'm living in a tiny Sunset Studio in-law with a new wife and a baby on the way. You offer to build a space-saving shelf to alleviate our claustrophobic conditions. And the next thing I know, you have installed a lovingly handcrafted piece on my kitchen wall as if it were a feature always meant to be there, and which, to my knowledge, is still there to this day, long after I've since moved on to bigger and better places. It was a true act of service, better than anything any money could buy. Months later, you stopped by unannounced to that same charmingly cramped apartment, hoping for a late morning coffee. Instead, you find my pregnant wife feeling dizzy and sick. You immediately load us into your car and drive us to the emergency room, brushing aside her protests. It turned out that she was so dehydrated that it threatened her safety and the safety of our child. My son Mark may very well owe his existence to your savvy, quick action that day. A short 6 months later, it is you, of course, who gives us a ride to the hospital the day that Mark is born. 8 years swim away like whitewater rapids on a fast-moving river. My wife's nervous PTSD has snowballed out of control as she increasingly cringes away from the world, locking herself for days on end in her darkened bedroom, avoiding her responsibilities of wife, mother, and even self-care, sending our marriage into an irretrievable tailspin. And there you are, a safety net with an open couch for me to crash on, a perpetually grimy but comfortably homey kitchen for me to use at will, sans restrictions, and an impressively credible gravitas testimony at my subsequent custody hearing, a key factor persuading the judge to grant me more time with Mark than I was even asking for, changing all of our lives permanently for the better. And here I am, getting remarried to a second wife who could not be a sharper contrast to my first, and yet inevitably you are there too, standing beside me irrepressibly and obviously happy at my newfound redemption, quick with your camera to document my fresh start. And then there are endless more mundane occasions that cumulatively result in just as much meaning when taken together. Do you need a companion for that new Beatles movie premiere? Do you have an extra seat at my Thanksgiving dinner? After preparing turkey, gravy, potatoes, stuffing, liquored eggnog, and cream cheese cranberries for a day and a half? Do I want someone to see a musical comedy, a live Shakespeare drama, or an extra ticket to a Giants game? Who are you going to call? Forget about Ghostbusters. It's Robert Emerson, again and again, natural as can be, always ready to come near and far for a nip and tuck chess battle, a Scrabble match of wits, a poetry reading, a karaoke night, a Pacifica pub crawl, or an extra marijuana chocolate magically and conveniently just when I need it at a piss-poor day filled with low blows. I get by, I'm going to try, I get high with a little help from my friend. How I miss you, my literary companion, with your innocent left-of-center politics while still retaining a Midwesterner's respect for Eisenhower Republicans. Your Norman Rockwell-colored glasses, the manifestation of the magnanimous Christmas spirit, enough to prove that Santa Claus is real, complete with your plump red jacket and your distinctive white beard, making the world a much better place for your presence and that much emptier and lonelier for your premature absence. You had your final stroke on February 13th, 2024, the day my mother died. It all went too quickly, and I know I will find myself calling your number and trying to stoically realize when reluctantly, the friend who loved me so much is no longer there. And so that it's not all doom and gloom, I'll close with a poem. This is looking back a bit. The spirit that moved me at age 31. Something old, something new, something hiding in my shoe. Something here, something there, something in my underwear. Something far, something close, something seeming somewhat gross. Somewhere going on my cycle, somewhere gone into denial. In the past and still on trial, somewhere in the rubbish pile. Something new and something old, so many new stories to be told. Something surging, something quivered, something yet to be delivered. It's alive, it's animated, it's bright and celebrated. It is vastly underrated. It's in there now, alive and kicking. It's a bomb that's loudly ticking. Familiar like a family friend, a blessed curse, pass on and then, atrophied and then again, twisted round and then again, laid to ground, but then again, maybe not. Oh when, oh when. It pounds, it wrestles, it screams, let me out. I only want to twist and shout, not quietly retreat and limp away and pout. Oh, let me out, oh good old boy, oh let me out. Oh, won't you please just let me out. Whatever it is, it's here to stay. It can't be made to go away. At least I hope not anyway. Where we're going, I cannot say. Something's happening to me today. But what it is, I cannot say. I cannot say. A sharpened tongue, a twisted twinkle, a twist on Twain and Rip Van Winkle. A little heartbreak, a little sorrow, a little promise for tomorrow. Some anxiety, some regret, some things that haven't happened yet. A lot of reading about the past, a time or two of tippet glass, of Alice going through the looking glass. And here and there, a proper pair of tortoise crawling past the hare, and on like Fred Astaire come rat and toad and goat and bear, the book of knowledge everywhere. The love of craft lives and breathes, and delights and sings with the trees, and sings the praises of the breeze, as she makes love to him upon her knees. He's trained the truth. She's scared, she's lonely, she's crafty, she's naughty, she's not to be trusted. He's clever and trusting, but usually busted. And thus from life, and from love, and from love, and from loss, and from bridges to be crossed, as if from nowhere, just as promised, the man emerges. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, Elizabeth Bell.
So is this good? Okay, so this is not my poem. This poem is by Anonymous. I heard Anonymous read it at a demonstration for Gaza, and then he gave it to me, still anonymous, no name on it. And it's called Triage in the Gaza Word Hospital. Every word has lost loved ones. All words flinch when approached. Words with sheets pulled over their heads overflow the morgue in the Gaza Word Hospital. Among those words that are missing in action, orchard, well, gloaming, hopscotch, giggle, flower, kite, streetlight, holiday. Even football lies flat, gasping for air. Wounded but surviving words, street corner, cousin, falafel, coloring book, underwear, elsewhere, mercy, honey, toddler. These words stumble drunkenly, no longer sure what they mean. Once legendary for his stability, arithmetic sits staring at the wall, unable now to say what counts. Silence, battered blue as night, sits in a corner muttering audibly, thereby disturbing sages thousands of miles distant. The personal pronouns I, you, we chase their tails, crazy, confused about exactly who is us and who is them. Hope, so shell-shocked, she's become a shadow without a breast to spring from, is just an exhalation now, barely still a word. Fearing a pandemic of meaninglessness, some words retreat into hiding. Humanity, brotherhood, equality, compassion, healing among them. Shelter, Hope's dear friend, fled elsewhere. Rumors say she's among the lost refugees, searching for any place to call home.
Okay, so Scooter Fine.
Thank you all for coming out. This has been a really fun reading, good reading, thoughtful reading. 2 or 3 poems. From Before. The forgotten power of an object to store memories. Something lost and something found. Something before time got in the way. When the rain was welcomed by the trees, their mountains bowed to the sun. The power of memories of mountains, of something lost. The night sky, a summer night driving across the plains, the endless miles with the radio as companion. Before time silence, none of us can live there from before. What will turn the wheel of the mountain of memory outside the rain? The new year, the silence of time, something before we got in the way of time, something found. Thank you. The planets dance with each other, and the moon, night after night, Jupiter leading the way, Saturn and Mars following. Dancing around the moon each night, the heavens watch and clap in time to the celestial two-step. The interplanetary tango, crepuscular trance, the sun fades as the sky melts into darkness, reflecting, echoing other nights and other skies and the things we have done. All right, one more. Likely, as not likely. Lonely flowers, midnight moon, narcotic tango, sound, morning train. The bookcase asleep. She spoke of flowers as if they were angels, a belief system. We learn, we forget, we remember. Fragments. The train can't stop. The moon has a visitor tonight. Jupiter, or is it Saturn? She speaks of flowers too, not as angels, but as flowers. As flowers, we move along. Thank you.
Okay, Marc Cormier. Who actually started the Cafe Bar readings back in the 80s?
A long time ago. Sort of. So I should go. I stand up.
You gonna stand? Okay, in that case, I'll raise it. But yeah, it has to be angled this way towards you. All right.
All right. Well, thank you. that way. All right, this one's called Maggot. Part 1, America. My country, this of you. When my heart hurts, it's as if another person's pain. They auctioned my heart off, and now the blood beat belongs to someone else. Sweet land that once pretended to be free. I have to touch your ground to make sure that it's still there. But no matter how much I hug you, I'm still not sure you're still there. Of this I sing, but my song seems to come from outside my throat, as if the me that's me is not me. Dough, dough, so much dough, they bought the palace and paid cash. Land where father died, land where mother cried. That which I see seems closer than it is, or much farther away. I hear a train whistle moan as it bounces off the back of Old Glory. The train carts a boxcar of ghosts. The soldiers that die do not ever fight again. Land of pilgrim sighs, voices I do know, even my own, sound distorted, small and meager, as if static stolen from an old-time radio, as if transmitted from somewhere out in space. From all the mountainsides, they harvest the iron that shapes the chains that hold we the people fast. I can beat against this invisible wall that cleaves me from everything else, but I know that my fists are as futile as today's newspapers. I should never have sat down to just think. My thoughts got away from me, and now I watch as they savage the headlines. This is a long poem. I'm going to read one more part. Part 2, music does not beat the heat. My country, these natives, thy Lord. Your name I once knew. When the door opens and I see your face, it feels like I've done this before. But the recollections that crowd the space between my ears feel as if they happen to another that I only knew briefly. As I might remember someone I once sat next to on an airplane. America, your rocks, your rills, your trees, your hills. When I eat, the food has no taste, not even that of cardboard. My body is a balloon. One day I may float away. One day I may pop. My heart empty as a drum, its thump echoes. The love I once felt now gone, as if a bus had just come, and now the bus stop is empty. No more shall tyrants trot upon we the people's heads, we said, and now they do. Our father and mother God, when I chew my cud, I'm a metronome, as if a mechanical cow pretending to eat. I once liked to walk, now each step strikes my feet as if a curse. If white this skin, our foul sin to have bought and sold the others. I went home, but it didn't seem like home. Nothing had changed except maybe for me. Toil and fear, blood and tears, I was once able to see you in my head, even when you were away. Now my mind's gone blind. My country, this of you, Christian, Christ the Jew. Rose I press my nose into, now no more than a picture of a rose. I can smell nothing.
Okay, Bruce Fisher.
I'm not used to walking around with my glasses, so it's really weird. I'm sorry, but I can't read without them. I'm sorry to read from my phone, but I just couldn't get it together.
It's all right.
It makes me feel bad, but this recently got published, so I thought I would read this. It's called Ocean in the Sky, Shoreline Amphitheater, June 4th, 1995. It was the hippie girl with her oatmeal cookies and laughing baby. She caught my eye with a smile that could melt a heart of stone, and with a voice that sung through the ages, and that I heard long before she spoke. I bought one of her cookies for 50 cents and took a bite. Good, I said. She smiled back. Her baby was staring at me, convulsing with laughter, and his eyes twinkled like crazy fingers of light, like the eyes of all the world. He likes you, she said. It must have been some unusual variety of oats, or maybe the butter had gone bad, but not long after eating it, sitting 10th row just in front of Garcia's amp, I began to feel peculiar. It was still well before the showtime. I always arrived early for dead shows, and the shoreline was a great place to see them. I liked taking in as much of the scene as possible, and today was special, for due to a series of unexplained segues in the third dimension, I was to meet bass player Phil Lesh at intermission and hopefully get his blessing for the film I was writing about the Grateful Dead. Everyone around me was high, although not necessarily by drugs. Some, of course, and apparently I had joined the drug-induced subculture of happy rogues. Mostly people around my age or a little older. There was a peace in their eyes, and it calmed me just sitting there and made me forget how high I was. There was something more, I think, in that ganja, in that cookie, more than ganja in that cookie, and I began to feel a warmth moving up my spine and out through the top of my head. I rose up out of my body higher and higher until I hit a soft, gelatinous membrane. Then a voice said, "You've reached the soft, gelatinous membrane." "Yes, I know," I answered. "You must let go if you hope to break through." "What, are you a therapist? I don't want to break through," I said. "Oh, it's too late for that," the voice said, then laughed. I recognized that laugh. "Laughing baby, is that you?" I had never been much into the drug scene. I was a whiskey and beer blues-loving pseudo-intellectual from L.A., where my musical taste never went much further than Lynyrd Skynyrd and Aerosmith. But I was a long way from all that. I knew now that Laughing Baby was a doorkeeper, a fearless guardian to higher states of awareness, or as Jerry would say, a signpost to new space, and that we were all expanding until a point of crystallization was reached and we remembered who we were. It would happen suddenly. Everyone would just stop and say, "Hey, it's you, I know you, it's been you all along." And as I came through the other side of the membrane, there were great sea creatures, whales, dolphins, giant squids, hundreds of them, thousands, all swimming in a great ocean in the sky, not of water but of ether. All sea life was leaving the oceans of earth and taking up residence in the sky, where they would escape the pollution of man, and all the land creatures were there too, alive on heavenly islands, and all animals I had known through the ages, all were happy and at peace. This ocean in the sky reverie continued for what seemed to be hours, but gradually I descended back into my 10th row seat just as the boys were tuning for the first song, and as Jerry strummed the opening chords of Bertha, I knew that ascension was only a seeming absence. All I remember about the first set was dancing like some crazy alien madman who stumbled into some cosmic tavern, quenching his thirst on psychedelic beer kegs after a lifetime of walking all the infinite deserts in the galaxy. At intermission, the Dead's publicist, Dennis McNally, gathered a small group of 5 or 6 of us to follow, and we followed him. Backstage was a laid-back family scene with a video arcade and pinball machine set up for the kids, a mini Chuck E. Cheese, the smell of hot dogs and grilled cheese sandwiches like a 4th of July parade. The laughter of children was everywhere. I tried not to look at anything too long, otherwise I would get lost in it. In the middle of one of Jerry's solos late in the set, I realized that baby did something to me, put a spell on me with his twinkling eyes and jiggling belly. We arrived at Phil's dressing room. Laughing Baby had been sitting on McNally's shoulder. McNally either didn't notice or didn't care, which made me wonder if he was in on it, although I wasn't sure what it was. Phil was eating dinner with a dude that was telling him something about some kind of sound technology he'd invented. Phil listened and asked questions. I was beginning to really space out, but the voices calmed me. I thought the dude said something like his new device would allow the musicians to make themselves invisible while playing. The idea was ridiculous. What would be the advantage of invisibility? They talked for about 45 minutes, and there was no time left for me to tell them about the film, which was good as it gave me time to come down a bit. Let's go talk on stage. We still have a few minutes, Phil said. Sounds great, I said. We went up to Phil's curtained off waiting area just behind his amp, stage right. The crowd was getting louder. From what you sent me already, your film idea sounds awesome, Phil said, but you might want to wait. Why is that, I asked. A huge transition is about to occur. I'm not sure how much time I'll have in a couple months to work with you. What kind of transition? I'm not sure, just a feeling. Phil strapped on his bass. I felt that way too. Just before the show, I had a vision. What kind of vision? Phil asked. I saw an ocean in the sky and all the sea creatures had moved there. Phil looked serious. That's it. That makes sense. What's that? Nothing, Phil said, but I'll have to tell Jerry they got scuba up there. He'll like that. Phil turned and walked out in the front of his amp. The crowd was going nuts. He yelled back at me, something you want to hear? Don't say St. Stephen. Unbroken chain, I yelled back. We can do that, he said. I stood there behind Phil's amp and listened to the rest of the show with Laughing Baby by my side. I didn't know what Phil meant about telling Jerry there was an ocean in the sky, but not long after that show, I knew.
Is there Susan? Okay, please, Susan. Is this the first time you've been here?
This is my first time here, so I hope that you will give me a moment to introduce myself and hold back on the hook, and and then I'll read a couple after that. Trans woman. A trans woman is what I am. That is plain to see. Passing through another's gaze, missing the rest of me. They see their own ideas, projected out of their mind. They do not seek the truth. It's not what they hope to find. They don't ask my opinion. They don't see inside my head. Their thoughts and their beliefs and expectations fill their eyes instead. Not my sorrows, not my triumphs, not the stars I wish upon. Unseen the hidden beauty, unheard my silent song. Flattened into 2 dimensions, they squeeze out all the rest, leaving me with no space for the self that I know best. So I went to bed early on November 5th, and woke up about 3 a.m. on the 6th, checked my phone, saw the results, went, well, damn. In the next hour, I produced 6 poems. I won't read all 6, but let me read a couple of those for you. Untitled. The storm howling outside the glass, the waves crashing down, the ship creaking out its last, the fear of being drowned. The darkness of a storm at night, danger at every turn. Power's out, there is no light, nothing can be discerned. Now is not the time for panic, no time for idle thoughts. Every fiber of your being focused as the ship is being tossed. Did you prepare for this? Did you bring the right supplies? Where are the things you will need in order to survive? Everyone aboard is now the crew, whether they believe it or not. No one is coming to save you. All must learn every knot. Together everyone must pull, or all will be forgotten. The wreckage of all our dreams in the cold dark at the bottom. Untitled. We were given our choice, and we chose this one way or the other, choosing to be born at this time, parents, sisters, and brothers, stepping out onto the stage and reading our lines. For us, this reality was made. We were given this time. Now that we are here, where do we take the story? leave a legacy of fear, or do we bask in glory? Our audience is watching from the shadows right off stage. One day we will join them when we choose to walk away. But now is our moment. This is our time to shine. In the heat of the spotlight, it's time to deliver your lines. How will we judge our performance? What will the others think? Did we move the audience, or did we stand out there and blink? This is what you signed up for. Do not forget your purpose. You stepped out onto this stage. Now make the effort worth it. Everything building up to this, the crescendo of the story, the drama that keeps all enthralled. Read your lines and do not worry. Thank you.
Okay, and Lasses Walker Rents, our house philosopher king.
All right, I decided that I needed to say, as it came clear to me, that last month the poetry reading was February 7th, which is my mother's birthday. Today is March 6th, which is her mother's birthday. Yeah, and the thing I have to say also is 3-6. So I never knew my grandmother, my mother's mother, and because she passed away at the age of 36 on March 6th in childbirth, so that her youngest daughter, my mother's youngest sister, her birthday is also March 6th. So she passed away on March 6th at the age of 36 while giving birth to her youngest daughter, whose birthday is also March 6th. And so those are these days and numbers stacked up in some particular way. And then there's also the fact my mother painted, much like I write poetry or write pages, because she wanted to. That's what I do. Maybe we're all the same in that way because we want to. But my mother told me once, she painted her mother's portrait from a photograph of her mother. This same photograph is what I knew when I was a child. And she told me, when I was an adult, she said, I'm painting my mother. She said, she wasn't from this country, neither was her mother. I'm painting my mother, she said. And then she closed her eyes and she said, I can see her in front of me right now, even though she passed away when my mother was 9. And then she painted the portrait of her mother, my grandmother. And, I've looked at that portrait many times. I've looked at that portrait. So in my mind, at this moment in time, just like my mother saw her mother in her mind, I see in my mind the picture, the portrait, the painting that my mother made of her mother. I see the photograph of her mother from which she painted the portrait. And I see, give me a moment, I see my mother before me now. Just like she saw her mother before her and painted a portrait from a photo on. And so for some reason I was just reminded of just this succession of, aesthetically fortunate manifestations of something that makes a coherent story of ourselves and of our mothers. And so just on that note, I'll just say just this one thing. Thich Nhat Hanh said something to the effect of, if there is a God who is a person, I feel sorry for that God. Because if God as a person is unborn, then God as a person has no mother. I feel sorry for someone who has no mother. And we all have a mother, so we all have that in common. So.
Okay, thanks everybody for coming and reading and being here. And especially thank Beau Beausoleil for jumping in